Work-life balance. Sounds great, right? I mean, in theory, I've got a chunk of time here, I'm at home. Chunk of time here, I'm at work. Clean distinction between the two. I can't focus on both at the same time, so I will build a wall between them, and I will try and keep these two spheres in balance so that everybody wins. That's the way it's supposed to work. Work-life balance. But here's the truth. Theory isn't practice, and in the real world, you already know this. It doesn't work. Work and life, they're not two separate spheres. Like it or not, they are intertwined. Now, that's not a declaration of failure here. Your work life didn't win over your personal life. Your boss does not own you 24/7, 365. What I mean is that work and life, they're not two distinct spheres. They're just part of your real life. And you might be setting yourself up for way more stress and draining way too much energy trying to separate them back out again. Let me explain. If you're new to the channel, my name is David Burkus, and I study high-performing teams and work with leaders to build their best team ever. If you're looking to grow as a leader and navigate the ever-changing workplace, then subscribe to the channel, or better yet, join our email newsletter community. Link in the description below. All right, let's get into it. For years, the advice around work-life balance was simple: build boundaries. Don't check work email after dinner, don't take personal calls at work, keep things separated, and they'll feel manageable. Fast forward to 2020, and the lines between work and life were blurred like never before. Kitchens turned into offices, work calls happened with kids and pets in the background, and suddenly the idea of work-life balance and boundaries felt outdated. The problem wasn't that we hadn't drawn enough boundaries. The problem was that boundaries themselves were not the solution. And research done all the way back in 2016, before 2020, showed that keeping work and life separate might be more trouble than it's worth. This human relations study looked at how people structured their work and their personal lives. There were fundamentally two different ways people went about it. Some people saw them as interrelated, as overlapping, and having to switch back and forth between them. The study called these the integrators. And others tried to maintain a distinct separation between work tasks and personal tasks, the segmenters. The study found that, surprisingly, the integrators felt far less stressed and often more productive, and better able to handle disturbances. When interruptions from one sphere or the other happened, it was the integrators that were better able to deal with it, and the segmenters who let it disturb their entire day, sometimes their entire week. Looser boundaries here actually serve people better because they get better at switching back and forth between the mental modes they need to handle work tasks and personal life tasks. This shouldn't surprise anyone, and yet it took a study to prove it. It's like a muscle. The more you develop that switch muscle, the easier you can transition between the two modes and the less stress you feel. And unsurprisingly then, if you feel less stressed, you're far more productive even in between switches. So the first step to balance? Let go of the idea of balance. Work and home life, they're not two distinct spheres. They're not opposite ends of a seesaw where one goes up and the other goes down. And by the way, even if they were, that's a terrible way to think about it, because no one ever goes up on a seesaw and then just hangs out there for 8 hours a day uninterrupted and then slams back down the other way. If you want to use the seesaw analogy, you're probably better off being an integrator anyway. So try this. Think of it more like ingredients in a recipe. The goal isn't to keep them separate. The goal is to blend them together into something that works beautifully for you. This might mean taking a quick personal call during work hours, and it might mean sending a few work emails after dinner and after the kids have gone to bed. That's fine. The goal here isn't to be always on, it's to be flexible enough to find ways to accomplish both. Now, practice caution here, because you don't want to send the message that you're just always on, always responsive, and always reachable. And as a manager, you don't want to send the message you expect that from your teams. As people build the recipe that works for them, that's going to mean different things to different people. Some people are going to be fine taking work calls after 5 p.m., but only on certain days. Other people may actually have to cut out early and pick up some childcare responsibility, but they can circle back and do email or other work after hours. Everyone's schedule is going to be different, and what you want to communicate here is that you're giving them flexibility and autonomy to come up with that schedule so long as they're still accountable to the team. You are not asking them to be accountable all of the time. And by the way, as a manager, some of this is with you as well. You might be that after hours email person. That's totally fine. Just communicate. You don't expect responses. And you might be that person who likes to work from vacation. If you are, please stop. But make sure that your people feel like they don't have to. And be sure to practice what you preach. Be flexible with your schedule and encourage flexibility. Give people autonomy and take a little autonomy for yourself. Lead by example here on how you structure your life in a way that works for you and that you expect them to do it differently, but in a way that serves them. One study from Arizona State University mentions establishing rituals. Since these cognitive transitions between work and home are going to happen anyway, the trick is to get really good at them. And establishing rituals that signal the transition to you can be one great way to do it. And maybe it's taking a walk after work but before home life hours so you sort of mentally reset. Or maybe it's starting your day with a specific list of tasks. For me personally, this actually involved having two different devices. I had a phone and I had an iPad. And when work was over, I put the phone down and the iPad was just for home mode. It had friendly social media and entertainment on it. And that way, anytime I picked one up or put one down, I was helping myself switch between modes. These small rituals act as bookends, signaling your brain that it's time to switch from one element to the other. And I know this sounds simple, but you wouldn't believe how effective it is. And speaking of bookends, the clock is not a bookend. There's a mindset shift here in this new world of work, and that's that the 9-to-5 grind needs to be a thing of the past. I mean, one of the reasons it was called a grind is that 8 straight hours being in one mental mode is a grind. And your people probably haven't structured their day like that for at least 4 years, probably longer. So let go of this idea that work only happens from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Let go of this idea that everyone needs to put in 40 hours of answerable, reachable time every single week. The truth is, to make a schedule that works for them, to be an integrator in the way that decreases stress and increases productivity, people's work hours are going to vary from week to week. As a manager, you got to trust that it's all okay. You got to think that your people, their role is really about fulfilling projects, not just serving certain hours. And when they're fulfilling those projects, there's going to be weeks where they can do it all in 30. And by the way, there's going to be weeks where they can do it in 50. So pay less attention to the clock and pay more attention to whether or not the work is getting done. If you're seeking work-life balance or work-life integration to begin with, it's probably because you're feeling some level of fatigue at work, some tiredness, and your schedule isn't the only way to solve that. It's also about your decisions and your cognitive load. So you're going to want to check out this video here on why you're so tired at work so often and what you can do about it beyond just your schedule.